She just arrived. So thank you, everybody. It's truly a pleasure to gather here today at COP30, the implementation COP, to highlight how multilateral development banks and partners are advancing climate adaptation at scale. Today's event centers on one message: the world needs faster, deeper, more systemic action on adaptation. And us as MDBs are demonstrating how to do that through innovation, long-term partnerships, and system-wide collaboration. To open the session, I am delighted to invite Anna Toni, Executive Director of the COP30 Presidency, to provide our framing remarks. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure to be here, especially in this meeting for us to talk about the role of multilateral banks on adaptation and the vertical funds, because this is for us an example of exactly what we wanted from this COP, to be a COP of implementation, to be a COP that strengthens multilateralism, and to be a COP that shows how people can be impacted positively by this transition. So it's really a great honor to be here. We just had the opening of the COP in the plenary with President Lula, and he made a very strong claim on the need for us to invest on adaptation. And it was very nice to see that now heads of states that have been talking much more just about mitigation are now talking much more about adaptation as well. And the role of the multilateral banks in this journey is fundamental. Everybody saw the 1.3 trillion report that Mr. Babayev and André Correa do Lago have issued, put the multilateral banks at the center of what we needed to do together. So I'm very, very pleased to be here. I think you give in examples. IDB has been a great, great partner with us throughout this journey, not just today in this meeting, but throughout the year. We have been building together the action agenda, the dialogue with the multilateral banks to see how we can make this COP concrete. And I think one of my wishes for this COP is that we're going to come out of this COP showing that there are ways. We had a great meeting in the middle of the week. I can't remember the day. Elon was there with us, with President Lula, about the role of multilateral banks, about the role of financing climate, in climate finance. And it is clear that everybody sees that this is a big role. But we can only do that together. So I just wanted to really thank all the multilateral banks that in the name of IDB that have been working so close to us, were CIF and the African Bank, the multilateral bank from Africa as well, all the banks that have been so much effort on making sure that we are going to, as somebody say, multiply the bread by investing in the multilateral banks. That's not just a question, if you put your money there, we are going to be able to achieve so much more. This is very, very important. So I look forward learning from this debate and take from what we get here. Hopefully we can also make the bridge to the negotiation, because we do know that although those things are a little bit apart, the action agenda and the negotiation, we do know the importance of the negotiations to give the right signal, the right political signal, so that the multilateral banks can do the great job that you're doing. So thank you so much, and I look forward to the debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. May I now invite all of the high-level speakers to come to the stage so we can take a picture, a family photo for the event. Thank you. Thank you. It is now my honor to invite President Golfan to speak about our commitment as MDBs on adaptation. President Golfan.
So, thank you very much. Bon dia. Good morning, ministers, Radovan, Vice Minister Collier, other authorities, Anatoni, our dear friend, dear MDB colleagues, climate funds, governments, and friends. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and speak on behalf of the MDBs. We believe resilience is crucial for sustainable development today. I would like to talk about our joint effort to strengthen adaptation resilience in our member countries. Climate disasters are striking harder and more often, costing the world over $320 billion just last year, according to some estimates, with developing countries bearing the brunt. In Latin America and the Caribbean, in this region, disasters now cost an estimated $1.2 million every hour, eroding livelihoods and long-term growth. So the urgency is clear, but it's also clear the opportunity. Investing in resilience means creating jobs, means strengthening government's balance sheets, means creating the enabling conditions to attract private capital. There is a financing gap. Developing countries, excluding China, need to invest an estimated $385 billion per year to substantially reduce loss and damages. This is currently less than 1/5 of what is coming from financial investors at this point. We need to scale investment in resilience and adaptation so we can better help countries withstand the next flood, the next hurricane, the next wildfire. We need to prepare before it hits, not after. Closing the gap requires what we're doing here, partnership. What we're doing at the MDBs, innovation. It requires what we're calling being impactful, implementing. And that's what we need to do here, but also each country through its NDCs. So, through the MDBs, I will say we are doing 4 tracks of implementation. First, we're scaling up funds and mobilization. So last year, and we just published, MDBs delivers and mobilized a record $180 billion for climate actions in low and middle income countries. That is $88 billion in own resources, plus $33 billion that we catalyzed from private capital. We expect to reach $185 billion by 2030 for middle and low income countries. Just for resilience, we expect financing to more than triple over a decade to reach more than $40 billion by 2030. At the IDB, the Inter-American Development Bank, we have a commitment to reach at least $25 billion by the end of the decade. That is 2.5 times what we did last time. Second, we need to advance transparency and we need to align. MDBs are transitioning to a digital platform to make climate finance reporting more transparent and cost-effective. And MDBs are also coordinating more, introducing common climate results, metrics, that ensures that we are all on the same page, including on refinancing resilience, so we can deliver measurable impacts, protect lives, livelihoods, and infrastructure. And we are launching today, and I'm happy to announce, an MDB joint technical paper, From Innovation to Impact, Building Resilience for People and the Planet. It will showcase our new system-wide approach to resilience. And we are not doing it alone. We are partnering with climate investment funds. Let me give you an example at the IDB. We have partnered with climate investment funds that have provided $1.3 billion over 70 IDB-led projects, just in resilience and natural-based solutions. And governments are also partnering. Spain and Germany, for example, are donating to support ARISE, the Accelerating Resilience Investments and Innovations for Sustainable Economies program that is led by CIF. And they have supported our flagship program, the Amazon Forever. Germany contributed $15 million to the Amazon Multi-Donor Fund. And Spain provided $12 million to the IDB and IDB Invest for Amazon Sustainable Development. The Climate Investment Fund approved $250 million just now for this COP in concessional resources and grants for the Amazon Clean Energy Accelerator Program. And the Green Climate Fund approved $162 million now also to the increasing water security here in the Amazon region. Third, mainstreaming resilience in national systems. That's quite important. So for example, the Asian Development Bank has a fiscal resilience initiatives that assist finance ministers in assessing and managing natural disasters related to their budgets, to their fiscal budgets, so that they can prepare and use the budget appropriate to natural disasters. Fourth, we are deploying financial innovation. The AIIB and the EBRD have issued dedicated resilience bonds. The Islamic Development Bank issued his Green Sukuk to fund projects. We are leveraging using guarantees, insurance, and other risk-sharing arrangement. Has the African Development Bank's room to run sovereign transactions that created headroom for $2 billion in new lending. And at the IDB group, we created the IDB Klima, that it reduces the cost of financing if you have reached your goals in terms of resilience. What about debt clauses? Well, we have increased by $2 billion just at the IDB, the coverage. So CRDCs, how they called, the debt clauses. We have reached now $4.2 billion of our loans have debt clauses that stop payments if you are hit by a disaster. And now we're increasing the coverage and the number of disasters that we can cover. We can also advance in what we call a regional disaster risk transfer program. What does it mean, risk transfer? It means that when a natural disaster hits you, you have a clause that will allow you not to pay, but in this case, you can transfer the cost to the insurance, where you weren't able to do it before. And we are working with debt for climate resilient swaps. It's a reality now. We just approved $125 million for Barbados to invest in resilience. And we're working with other MDBs and other countries to do more debt swaps. We have been working also with coordination. We launched what we call the Ready and Resilient Americas. Basically, we have heard countries telling us this is a major issue. We need to coordinate when a disaster hits. We need to prepare ourselves. So we launched it, and we had more than 22 countries just for early warning systems, for having a coordinated response, to have transfers of financial risks. We created what we call the FIRE, Financial Instruments for Ready and Resilience, to help countries and companies manage disaster risks and strengthen long-term resilience. And here at COP, we are announcing together with the Caribbean Development Bank, with CAF, a Caribbean multi-guarantor debt for resilience facility. You know that the Caribbean is badly hit by natural disasters. So we created a facility that can work together, several institutions guaranteeing together, so it's a multi-guarantor, to have a joint facility so that it is easy for each country to access, so they can coordinate. We have a standard which is consistent, transparent, and efficient. The model uses public guarantees to attract private capital, that's a debt swap, when public fiscal space is limited for resilience, and that means that we're actually opening space for more investment overall in resilience. And there's more here at 30. We are adapting 55 schools, heat-ready schools, to support heat waves here in the Amazon with the help of other governments. The Qatar Education Above All Foundation is helping us with that. And we are launching the Amazon Forever Facility for Resilient Cities, because 70% of the population of the Amazon live in cities. And if we can make their lives better in cities, they will live more peacefully with the forest. So we need to do it with public money, with MDBs, with climate investment funds, with governments, but we need to do it also with private sector. So we need to make the loans and the financing of private sector also contingent on disasters. So we need to expand our ready and resilience to have the ready and resilience enterprises, ready and resilience private sector, that whenever a natural disaster hits, even the private sector loans get delayed. You get some break. IDB Invest, our private sector arm, has joined EIB, IFC, EBRD in signing the Investor Resilience Challenge, an initiative to improve the incentives for public and private investors to mobilize capital for resilience. So let me conclude and invite you for this important panel. Resilience is no longer a future concern. It is crucial for development today. It is its foundation. It protects lives, it preserves fiscal space, and opens the door to private investment. As you all know the old fable, the ant that prepared for winter while the grasshopper waited too long. As MDBs, our role is to help countries prepare to invest in resilience before the crisis hits, not after. That means scaling finance, aligning systems, making resilience central to how we build, how we plan, how we grow. Together, we can help turn preparation into protection and resilience into opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Golfan. Now we're going to welcome our three main speakers to the floor. Minister Bream Radovan, sorry, please take a seat. Vice Minister Stephen Collet, Netherlands, please take a seat. And Claudio Castro, Mayor of Renca, Chile, please take a seat. Thank you for joining us today. We wanted to complement what you just heard at a global level with three visions from different perspectives: a government perspective, a government, but it's also bringing the voice of private sector at the local level and the local level. So Minister, I'll give you first the word to you.
So, thank you, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Climate change threatens people's life, and in Europe, we are only just beginning to imagine what our world will look like when it's 2 or 3 degrees warmer, but we are seeing in many regions of the world, people are already feeling the devastating effects of climate change. President Lula just mentioned in his opening remarks the horrible damage suffered, the horrific image of the damage suffered by Jamaica and the Caribbean from the devastating force of Hurricane Melissa that we just saw a couple of days ago. We are seeing frequent and severe droughts and floods in Zambia, which disrupt the agriculture and energy sectors. And in Egypt, extreme temperatures and salt in the soil are spoiling harvests. So climate change affects everyone, but not everyone equally. So we as a world community have to act now and have to act fast. And Germany is putting its money where its mouth is. We remain committed to making a fair contribution. But not only that, we want others to step up as well. And by others, I do not only mean traditional donors. I expect all stakeholders to contribute their fair share to climate finance. I'm talking about economically strong countries, major CO2 emitters, and emerging economies. Today, 2/3 of global emissions are released in emerging and developing countries. This makes it more important than ever to have shared ambitions. There are tough discussions, as some of you may know, happening in Germany at the moment, not only in Germany, also in Europe, but also in Germany, around development cooperation and international climate finance. But one thing is clear, only by protecting the climate worldwide, we can secure the livelihoods of people, and we are committed as German government. Just one example, for decades, Germany has helped to preserve the Amazon as the lungs of our planet because it provides us all with fresh air, including in Europe, and we will continue to do so. Why are we doing this? Because supporting vulnerable people is a moral imperative, and I would like to point out that helping people to adapt to climate change also makes sense economically for all parties involved. Investment in resilience creates jobs and opportunities for innovation, green technologies, and sustainable partnerships. And this is what we want to focus more on, how to marry the two: economic cooperation and development and sustainable resilience. Germany's development cooperation places also strong emphasis on adaptation, particularly in Africa among LDCs, because adaptation prevents further loss of life and livelihood, saves money in the long run, and is a matter of human rights. But we as a global community need to do more. First, we have to scale up climate finance using the multilateral climate funds. They bring climate finance providers together and scale their impact to achieve transformative change. Second, we have to get the multilateral development banks to invest much more in climate projects. Only then they can deliver finance at scale for areas like resilient infrastructure. And third, and closely related, we need the creativity, efficiency, and capital of the private sector. This is central to achieving scale and impact, because resilience cannot be financed by governments alone. However, it is not just about raising more money. We also have to make sure that climate finance is available to everyone. The climate investment funds are key partners for us. They support 65 million people worldwide in coping with the effects of droughts, floods, and typhoons in Germany. will remain a strong and reliable partner. We will contribute significantly to the CIF's new ARISE program. This program will support countries in transforming their adaptation strategies and finding adequate investments by using tools like de-risking. ARISE creates the conditions needed for private investment to become a driving force for climate resilience. We want the CIFs and the development banks and other partners to work together even more closely to increase private sector engagement. And we expect ARISE to deliver measurable improvement to resilience, not only in terms of GDP or megawatts, but in terms of lives saved and livelihoods protected. A young woman in Africa who can rebuild her business after a cyclone, for instance, a farmer on a small island in Asia who can bring in the harvest despite rising sea levels, a community in Latin America that can thrive thanks to green jobs. All of these examples give me hope, and I'm glad to be here today together also to kickstart the first phase of ARISE. So let's make ARISE a symbol of what multilateralism can achieve, of what we can do together when innovation, finance, and willingness to cooperate come together. Let us send a strong signal that we can connect global ambition with local realities to save lives and to build futures for people worldwide. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, and I'm sure as MDBs working with the climate investment funds are happy to hear about this contribution, and we'll put it to work soon. So, Vice Minister, please take the floor to share with us.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Ms. Tony, and thank you for your hospitality and leadership. Has said this COP should be about implementation. We know what to do, right? And we are sitting here with, I think, one of the most powerful club of people who are able to make a difference. And those are the MDB, the Multilateral Development Banks, as my German colleague also mentioned. You are key to making this implementation a reality. You are best placed to address climate finance needs of your client countries and help them in shaping and implementing national climate action, in mitigation, in adaptation, and in mobilizing finance. So we highly value the fact that the MDBs, and let's rally really around that flag, have put climate change action plans centrally on their agendas and have explicit climate finance targets. And we want to build on last year's joint MDB statement, where you jointly projected to collectively boost MDB climate finance for low and middle income countries to $120 billion by 2030, including a crucial $42 billion for adaptation, and mobilize $65 billion from the private sector by structuring finance and deal flows. Now, this is key. This commitment is key, and we do all we can to support that commitment becoming a reality. And we play our part there. 60% of our climate finance is on adaptation. And we have done all we could to facilitate more capital for the MDBs to unlock even more. Now I want to and then I want to give the floor to the next speaker, but I just finalize by taking you a bit, by taking an initiative which we launched with a number of countries in Sevilla, putting that on the table here as well. We have in Sevilla, in the conference on financing for development, we talked a lot about the role institutional investors can play. So jointly with the MDBs and institutional investors, we launched an initiative jointly with the UK and the Nordic countries to actually to have a joint partnership on opportunities between institutional investors and MDBs. We launched a declaration there, which I want to introduce in this COP30, because I think it's spot on. It highlights measures that can be taken to turn the high-level ambitions of the Paris Agreement and the NCQG into a tangible pipeline of bankable projects by A, creating standardized investment structures, so an MDB investment class, 2, enhancing risk mitigation tools. And 3, improving data transparency. And I think that's key, through initiatives such as the Global Emerging Market Risk Database, the GEMS. Now, this declaration has been signed in Sevilla, and I think it should go on here in Belém. And I think a testimony to its success is that we last year already mobilized over $1 billion of Dutch pension fund money because of this cooperation between these countries, multilateral development banks, and let's continue to do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Minister. And to close this round, and because today is Adaptation Day, but it's also Cities Day, and given what happened last week in Rio, we wanted to include Mayor Castro to tell us about what happened in Rio and the commitments that you also, as the Global Covenant of Mayors, had last week.
Okay, thank you very much, and I'm glad to be here, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy, and proudly representing the local government's authorities constituency, especially the vibrant cities of Latin America, I thank you for this invitation. Today, I share 4 clear and urgent messages from cities on the front lines of climate action. 1, cities are delivering on climate, providing a powerful source of hope. Local and regional governments are first responders to climate impacts and essential implementers of adaptation. GCOM cities implement nearly 194,000 mitigation and 24,000 adaptation actions, demonstrating immense local delivery. 3 in 4 C40 cities reduce per capita emissions quicker than their national governments. 2, from the Local Leaders Forum in Rio to COP30, our yearly offer of action shows how city success turns climate negotiation into delivery. From low-emission zones to urban nature-based solutions, C40 and GCOM cities are outlining our next 12 months of action. We will present this annually, shifting COP from negotiation to implementation. 3, but we can't do this alone. We need greater subnational inclusion in COPs to go farther and faster. With over 14,000 subnational leaders, we stand ready to help national governments and development finance institutions fight the climate crisis. To move from negotiation to action, we need COP30 outcome text to officially recognize cities and subnational governments as full partners. COP negotiators to build on champ success, creating a space within the COP process for action and solutions through multi-level partnerships. And 4, C40 and GCOM cities will continue to collaborate with MDBs and climate funds to elevate and strengthen support. Our ongoing collaboration through the MDB Cities Group affirms cities' central role in advancing climate commitments. Through this partnership, we ask you to first accelerate and scale up urban adaptation finance and delivery for cities, especially in the Global South. Second, develop specific urban climate action programs, providing technical assistance for project preparation, aggregation, and implementation. Scale up concessional MDB finance and enhance support for private finance mobilization. And third, develop specific tools and financial instruments to enhance direct and simplified access to MDB and climate fund finance, including via guarantees, sub-sovereign lending programs, and country platforms integrating national and subnational development banks. The message is clear. Cities are delivering climate action, and finance must follow. Let us use this momentum to move decisively from commitment to implementation. Our collaboration, nation, cities, and financial institutions is the only way to secure a resilient future. We must redefine the global finance system and accelerate investment for every person in every city and every territory. Thank you very much.
Ministers, Mayor, thank you so much for being part of this conversation. And now I would like to invite the Vice President representatives of African Development Bank, AIIB, New Development Bank, and EIB. Kevin Kariuki, Vice President for Power, Energy, Climate, and Green Growth in African Development Bank. Ajay Bhushana Pandey, Vice President of Investment Solutions, AIIB. Ambrose Fayol, Vice President, European Investment Bank. And Rajiv Ranjav, Vice President of Chief Risk Officer, New Development Bank. Thank you for joining us. And before I ask each one of you to tell us about the work that your MDB is doing on adaptation, let me just talk a little bit about the paper that we're launching today, From Innovation to Impact, Building Resilience for People and Planet. The urgency is clear. Climate change is already disrupting societies. We need to increase our adaptation finance. And as we just heard from President Golfan, MDBs have doubled our adaptation since 2019. But we provide more than finance. We catalyze systemic change. In the publication, you will see how we are embedding climate risk in development strategies and sector policies, how we are supporting national plans, long-term strategies, and country platforms, and how we're building institutions, data systems, and regulatory frameworks. We are trying to also strengthen financial intermediary and private sector resilience. We're also innovating in unprecedented ways. We are documenting in this paper adaptation bonds and sukuk, climate resilient debt clauses, risk-sharing mechanisms, performance-linked adaptation finance, resilience equity funds and local banking facilities, nature-based solutions, and place-based climate programs. But the barriers persist. Countries are facing with fiscal constraints, weak pipelines, limited climate risk data, insufficient incentives for private sector participation. And what enables scale? The report is highlighting 3 enablers: strong cross-government coordination, clear incentives for private capital, and predictable concessional finance aligned with MDB programming. This will show now all this innovation per MDB. So starting with EIB, could you share with us the innovations and your commitments on adaptation?
Thank you very much, and thanks a lot for organizing this event. There are 3 questions that I would like to answer very quickly. How much, with whom, and what for? How much? At EIB, we have decided that adaptation was a priority, and a true priority. We have just adopted our 5-year plan for climate. The new one. We had one until 25, and we have now one from 26 to 30. In this new plan, we have decided to double adaptation financing compared with the last 5 years. That means a financing of 30 billion euros over the next 5 years for adaptation. So that's a big commitment that actually is something, because we see that we need to take up financing and adaptation in everything. Now, with whom? Actually, this is partnerships, and we do a lot of that with our fellow MDBs. And the Dutch Minister Collet just was referring to initiatives and also the German minister in Sevilla. I mean, this is also the result of many months of discussions, for example, on the climate resilient debt clauses. That is so important for countries, especially the small island and developing states. This is something that we have put ourselves in our contracts in EIB. So the climate resilient debt clauses are in place, and that goes together with other measures that are supporting investment in these geographies. and actually, when you look at this, you need to work with partners that are all over the place, be it for example, the European Commission for us is key because they give us guarantees. And now what for? And I will give you two kind of projects that we support with our activity in adaptation. One is especially related to, outside of Europe, 30% of what we do is adaptation. And that is a bigger figure than what we have inside Europe. This is also something that we are going to double. Water is one of the key strategic investments for adaptation. And there are two different, I have in mind two different examples of what we can do to be concrete. One is the project that we have done in Bangladesh to help with the water supply and water treatment in the big cities of Bangladesh. That has allowed basically 10 million people to have a better life. And one is the project that we have with other MDBs in Jordan to make desalination of water taken out of the Red Sea in Aqaba, working with renewable energy. And you have then a water pipeline that takes up the water to Amman, where there is a shortage of water. And that brings water to the region of Amman, and that's something that is a very, very interesting and promising investment that we are pleased to support. The second and type of completely different initiative that we have, but I think completely in line with the adaptation, scalable climate adaptation, is how can we help the developing countries put in place the best possible climate risk strategy and regulation. And for that, we have an initiative that is supported by the German government that is called Greening the Financial System, where we are supporting central banks, but also financial institutions in countries like Kenya, Ethiopia, Georgia, many, many countries, especially in Africa, to think in terms of how should we look at climate risk? How should we put in place a strategy that maybe in some cases a taxonomy? How can we put in place something that will attract investment because we have the right regulation? So that's what we try to do at EIB. Thank you.
Thank you. And let's move now to the New Development Bank to share the examples of your clients.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Our commitment to climate finance, you can just think that we have traveled more than 20,000 kilometers. We have traveled more than 20,000 kilometers from Shanghai to this place. So we have a strong commitment. Our team is here with me. It's a privilege to join my fellow NDB colleagues here as we collectively adapt climate adaptation efforts. I welcome the opportunity to share perspectives on New Development Bank, our continuous efforts for adaptation in our member countries. The NDB was established 10 years ago as outcome of BRICS leaders' vision to mobilize resources for sustainable infrastructure and development in BRICS and other emerging market economies. This year, NDB marks its 10th anniversary, and banks has approved almost $40 billion or for more than 120 projects, demonstrating robust impact and reach across sectors. NDB's approach is fundamentally demand-driven. We put great emphasis on respecting countries' aspirations, capacities, and evolving development priorities. Our support for the Paris Agreement is grounded in the specific needs and goals of our member countries, including their nationally determined contributions. Under the bank's strategy for 2022-26, we have a 5-year strategy undergoing. We have committed to a 40% climate finance target and we are on track to deliver it. At NDB, we prioritize adaptation through climate resilient infrastructure, integrating climate and disaster risk considerations into the very fabric of our projects. In India, our interventions have included nature-based solutions, such as the creation of green space and biodiversity zones to restore water bodies and withstand floods. In China, advanced engineering designs have been implemented to strengthen road infrastructure against extreme floods and landslides. To further mainstream climate adaptation, NDB is developing climate risk assessment tools to foster understanding of exposure and impact across projects. Beyond financing, NDB helps clients prepare bankable adaptation projects. Through our project preparation fund, we empower analysis of climate risks and vulnerabilities as seen in water supply projects serving drought-affected communities. The bank has actively promoted green technology transfer and collaboration across member countries. For instance, South African partners have leveraged NDB platforms to access and implement sophisticated water management technologies from China. Such partnerships illustrate the practical value of international cooperation for adaptation. In closing, I will reiterate that NDB look forward to deepening collaboration with all relevant stakeholders. Our engagement will be shaped by a readiness to listen and act on the specific needs and aspirations of countries and communities. As we prepare for our forthcoming general strategy, that is 2027 to 31, NDB is committed to a consultative and responsive approach, ensuring that our support is tailored to real challenges and priorities arising from the countries themselves. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Let's move now to the other side of the stage with AIIB, please.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here. You have asked about what the MDB is doing. So let me share some of the experience of the work that we are doing at AIIB. Many of you may know that AIIB is a new bank, and we are not even a teenager. We are just about 10 years old, right? And in 10 years, in this journey, and which was also interspersed by COVID and other factors, we have grown to be about a $65 billion US bank, US dollar bank, $65 billion. Total more than 330 projects we have approved in 39 countries. And if you look at our, the articles of agreement, it says that we will develop sustainable infrastructure. And we have in our corporate strategy, we had our internal goal that we'll achieve 50% climate financing by 2025. However, we exceeded this target, and in 2024, our climate financing was 67%. And out of that, 72% went to mitigation and 28% to the adaptation. So what we have done in this year, we have revised our corporate strategy, and we said that we will exceed. Earlier, our goal was 50%. Now we have said that we will exceed 50% every year, the climate finance, and naturally, the adaptation. Now, if you look at this, against this backdrop, what are the specific, on the adaptation side or the resilience side we are doing, particularly, let's say, in this region, in Brazil. Just see the kind of a coincidence that, we are holding this COP summit in Brazil, and on 30th of October, just about 10 days back, our board approved $1 billion climate policy-based financing for Brazil. And in that climate policy-based financing, National Adaptation Plan is one of the major components. So I think I'm very glad that this has happened, and then we are going to work with the government of Brazil, and then on the adaptation side and also the policy side, and what we can do in this entire area. So I think this is very, very relevant. In addition to that, we also have approved 3 more the climate policy-based financing, and again, each one of them has a adaptation component, that is Uzbekistan, Bangladesh, and Egypt. So these are the some of the major things we have done. Also, in terms of promoting the private sector, because what we realize is that the MDBs of the world, we all can give our own financing, but unless and until we mobilize the private sector, if we make this project bankable, this whole thing cannot be scaled up. And some of the things that we have done, in this region, like in Chile, we work with one of our private partners, and we have financed the desalination plant. I mean, these are some of the things that we are doing. Also, we have financed some of the municipal projects in this area, and this adaptation is not something is something that it requires some kind of a why, let me explain to you that how, why does it make a very, very strong commercial sense? Not only just, it's a good thing to have for the climate, but it makes a very strong commercial sense. We in AIIB, which President Goldfein also mentioned, that we issued 2 bonds, 2 adaptation bonds in 2023 and 25 of $1 billion Australian dollar. I mean, this is the adaptation. So if the people are willing to put their money into these bonds, that means that actually shows a lot of hope that the people, who are, or the investors, they are very, very, they are very hopeful that, in this structure, the bankable projects would come, and then a lot of investments will take place in the, on the resilience side or the adaptation sides. So I think that what, as an MDB, what we should be doing, and this is what, in AIIB we are trying to push, is that, the multiple instrument, as I mentioned, that the policy, through policy, the policy-based loan, we can work with the government to create and appropriate policies so that, a lot of, the private capital gets attracted into this resilience, on the resilience side. And secondly, we can also act like a catalyst to the, and then mobilize a lot of private capital, just like, I've mentioned about, some of the private sector projects that we have done in this area. And thirdly, our direct financing. I mean, this is something. So I think, and then also we can blend it with many of these, the donor organization, and we have, the Climate Investment Fund, and then a lot of technical supports, and then the entire pipeline of the investable projects on the adaptation side can be created so that, we all can, what I see that there are different pieces are there, and what we are trying to, the jigsaw puzzle, and different pieces are there, and I think, all those puzzles pieces are getting collected, and then, what we are getting is the good adaptation, the picture, and then, and where we all can collaborate, and when we can create a stack of investments so that we can do more and more for adaptation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lastly on this round, the African Development Bank.
Thank you very much. I think my starting point would be why adaptation and climate finance is important for Africa. And the first thing is to make 2 observations which are being seen all over. And the first one is that the World Meteorological Organization tells us that Africa is warming 50% faster than anywhere else in the world, first of all. And secondly, the Global Center on Adaptation tells us that Africa's climate is locked in for the next 20 years. What this means is that we need to ensure that we are able to be there for Africans as we adapt and as we face the impacts of climate. Already, we incur about $7 to $15 billion every year due to climate impacts. So as a bank, what we've done is that in view of this, we've made very deliberate efforts to mobilize significant climate finance. So first of all, about 5 years ago, we committed to allocate at least 40% of our investments as climate finance, of which 50% would be adaptation finance. we've done super well. Over the last 5 years, I can confidently say that we've done about, instead of 40%, we've done 49% of our investments as climate finance, of which 60% is adaptation finance. And what this has amounted to as part of that commitment is that we committed that we would be able to mobilize $25 billion by the end of this year. And as at the end of last year, we had mobilized $19.6 billion as climate finance, of which about $14 billion was adaptation finance. So this is because we understand that really we need to be there for Africans when it comes to adaptation to climate finance. And so what we did is that noting that that is not enough, we actually also committed to do another doubling of our adaptation finance through what we call the AAAP, Africa Adaptation Acceleration Program, with a Global Center on Adaptation. And I think we are making good progress in that regard. But not satisfied, and especially arising from COP26, where developed countries made commitments to double their adaptation finance from not so much, from maybe 20 billion to 40 billion. We took that as a challenge, and we said, how can we be able to mobilize additional adaptation finance for Africans? Sorry, climate finance, but with a big proportion being adaptation finance for Africans. So we came up with what we call the Climate Action Window. And in this particular case, we had support from the UK government, who gave us 200 million pounds. There was Germany, 40 million euro. The Dutch gave us 100 million euros, and the Swiss, who gave us 15 million euro. So what we did with this is actually genuinely at the leading edge of this particular discussion, because we have been able to generate what is a genuine pipeline of adaptation projects. I am sure that not many MDBs today can boast of having an adaptation pipeline that is actually finance ready. And in this particular case, we generated about $4 billion of interest, which crystallized into about $800 million of adaptation finance projects. We have already financed 322, and I'm already in discussions with some of the MDBs here to find ways of co-financing the balance of about $480 million. So that's one of what I would say, one of the great innovations that we've come up with. And what we are trying to address here is that whereas the countries, the developed countries, did actually commit to doubling adaptation finance, when you approach them to finance some of the adaptation projects, they say, where are the adaptation projects that will be financed? And there were none. And so that's why we came up with this idea of the climate action window and generated this particular pipeline. So the next innovation that I really would like to talk about is what we call the adaptation benefits mechanism. And this is the first recorded non-market approach under Article 6.8 of the Paris Agreement. And it is now issuing what we call certified adaptation benefits, which are akin to the certified emission reduction credits under CDM. Here, the advancement of what we call solidarity levies, where emitters could spend levies purchasing certified adaptation benefits, presents, in my view, a very veritable opportunity to transform global adaptation finance. Because I do believe this is the first time you can actually trade in what we call adaptation benefits. It's something that has been created within the bank, and I'm really, really proud of our team that is doing that work. And thirdly, is what we call the Youth Adapt. Under Youth Adapt, we are trying to promote youth-led adaptation initiative and actions. And here, although the amounts are modest, we've already invested about $5.4 million in grants to 41 youth-led enterprises in 20 African countries. And to date, these have generated 10,000 jobs, of which 61% are businesses are women-led, and we have leveraged about $7 million of additional private sector finance and donor financing. let me stop there for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, panelists. I'll invite now the Director Generals and Climate Heads, representative of the other 4 MDBs, the Director General Yukov from the Asian Development Bank, Tanya Fuller, Director Technical Assistance of the CEB, Giampiero Naci from the EBRD, and I understand that from the World Bank is Demetrius sorry. I was trying. So the same question on what we are, what your institutions are trying to do. I'm sorry. I missed one, Islamic Development Bank. I'm so sorry. I do want to ask you to to highlight the most significant innovation that you're doing on adaptation, because of course we want to hear from the countries. And we want to have this panel that is going to talk the countries themselves that are so much in need of these resources. So let's go in this round the same direction that we did before, but again, trying to highlight what's the most impactful and innovations that you have done in your institutions.
Thank you. So I represent the Asian Development Bank. We are headquartered in Manila, Philippines. So every year, Philippines is hit by about 20 typhoons. Just as we were driving to the airport, the government announced another signal number 1, signal number 2, as the country experienced 2 super typhoons in a space of less than 2 weeks. So this by itself kind of provides a broad background picture of why we should be worried about climate adaptation and disaster risk management. So I would say that for Asia and Pacific region, investments in adaptation no longer a choice. It's a necessity for pursuing inclusive and sustainable development. Thus, ADB has made a commitment to invest at least $34 billion US in adaptation finance by the year 2030. So the question is how our financing can support our developing member countries to further stimulate, secure, and sustain investment adaptation at the pace and the scale that matches the problem, as I will now demonstrate. First, to stimulate the investments, adaptation must be a core of every development decision. So adaptation cannot be just an afterthought. So this requires bringing adaptation to the attention of ministers of planning and finance and embedding it within the country's overall planning processes. As IDB President kindly mentioned, we recently launched what we call Fiscal Resilience Initiative to systematically engage ministers of finance on these actions and to follow through with a policy-based financing. For instance, through a policy-based financing, we're supporting Mongolia to develop a climate-aligned public investments programming and establish green bond framework. Second, to support countries' secure investment adaptation, ADB is undertaking a climate adaptation investment planning program. This initiative currently supports 13 countries in the region in translating their national adaptation plans into investment programs, which will help generate a pipeline of strategic adaptation investments addressing specific barriers to investing in adaptation. For example, the Adaptation Investment Plan in Armenia has supported the Ministry of Economy to identify investments in climate-smart production, processing, and marketing to strengthen the resilience of horticulture value chains. In addition, recognizing that the most vulnerable countries need additional support, we have created $430 million grant window under our 14th cycle for the Asian Development Fund to provide additional grants for adaptation and introduce more favorable lending terms for small island developing countries to incentivize adaptation investments. And third, the need to sustain investments in adaptation. Adaptation investments cannot be just a one-off. Hence, the need to strengthen country systems for which adaptation outcomes can be delivered at a scale, pace that benefit all. For example, under the Community Resilience Partnership Program that focuses on increasing local level adaptation in Cambodia and in Nepal, we're working with the agencies responsible for decentralization of service delivery at the local level to strengthen participatory planning and budgeting processes, to engage local communities in adaptation-related decision-making. Lastly, in implementing these actions, ADB is closely coordinating and partnering with other MDBs and global climate funds. For example, we coordinated on behalf of all MDBs in Bangladesh to provide the coherent support for Bangladesh Country Platform on Climate Change. In partnership with the Green Climate Fund, we just recently joined a program which we call Glaciers to Farm Program, or G2F, to help manage transboundary climate risk in Central and West Asia. And of course, we're looking forward to operationalizing the new climate resilience program with the CIF. So in closing, let me emphasize that ADB remains committed to ensuring that our collective efforts help reduce adaptation financing gaps. In the last 5 years, we provided about $15 billion in adaptation finance, and with a robust pipeline of projects, we're pretty sure that we'll invest at least $34 billion by the year 2030. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Just before a word of thanks, before I start to say that we are pleased to be here, and thank you to our friends of IDB and CIF for inviting us, your key partners, and as member of the working group for MDBs, we second all the statement made by Ilan on MDBs working group. And actually this defined our trajectory. When you look at Islamic Development Bank, we met our 2025 climate finance target ahead of schedule in 2024. Since pledging $13 billion for the period 2023-2030 at COP27, the ICB has committed $6.2 billion in climate finance, and as of now, including $2.9 billion for adaptation. On the ground, our portfolio ranges from climate resilience water in Kazakhstan, coastal protection in Togo, and flood protection in Oman. The Water Energy Food Nexus platform for climate finance in Pakistan, and then it's an illustration of the upstream policy links and downstream delivery that we are trying to pursue. At COP28, we pledged $1 billion for adaptation in fragile member countries, and half of which is already committed. We serve 57 member countries, many of which are water-stressed, fragile, or fiscally constrained. The ISDB brings in Islamic finance at scale to adaptation. Our green and sustainable sukuk open capital markets for resilience, directing proceeds to, for example, water security, resilient food systems, and we are also promoting Takaful, which is the insurance, Islamic insurance, to expand risk protection for vulnerable communities. Across our operations, we have developed comprehensive physical climate risk management systems, along with Paris alignment checks. In line with our joint methodology and principles, we are also improving how we measure results, moving beyond inputs to outcomes. Looking ahead, we are stepping up drought resilience and nature-positive financing, aligned with our engagement with the Riyadh Globe Drought Resilient Partnerships, the perspective of the Middle East Green Initiative, and then the Green Climate Fund. In conclusions, I would like to identify 3 accelerators that matter to deepen adaptation impact. 1, predictable concessional finance to the risk first movers. 2nd, project preparation at scale to translate strategies into pipelines. And 3rd, whole of government coordination to integrate climate risk into macro fiscal and investment decisions. Together we can move from innovation to impact so communities and businesses thrive in climate change world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Tanya.
Thank you. Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to join this vital discussion on how multilateral development banks can accelerate adaptation. For all of us, adaptation is no longer a technical agenda. It is a human imperative. the Council of Europe Development occupies a unique place in our MDB family. We work exclusively in Europe, and our social mandate calls us to strengthen cohesion and protect the most vulnerable. That mandate shapes our entire approach to climate action. Building the resilience of vulnerable people and communities is, in itself, one of the most effective forms of climate adaptation. Our context is clear. Europe is the fastest warming continent on Earth, heating at more than twice the global average. Physical climate risks are intensifying across regions, however, and municipalities, and their social implications are profound. Climate change does not only create new hazards, it does magnify existing inequalities. Or, as Minister Alabati Radovan in her keynote said, climate change affects all, but not all equal. Those with weaker safety nets and fewer financial buffers are hit hardest and recover last. That is how a climate shock becomes a social crisis. For the CEP, adaptation therefore delivers a double dividend. It does strengthen climate resilience while improving social well-being. Let me share 3 ways that we make this concrete. First, we invest in resilient social infrastructure, hospitals, schools, and essential facilities that must not only withstand climate shocks, but stay open when people need them most. Second, we build resilient cities, supporting urban renewal that integrates nature-based solutions, greener spaces, blue infrastructure, ventilation corridors, and passive cooling, particularly in social housing, where these measures directly protect the most vulnerable. And third, we enhance prepared communities, financing early warning systems, emergency equipment like for wildfire, and local capacities for responding to floods and heat waves. All of these efforts share a single purpose: to make resilience a lived reality. For the CEP, social resilience is the pathway through which we deliver climate resilience. As multilateral development banks, our collective challenge is to turn adaptation ambition into lasting, equitable resilience. That means scaling up solutions that protect people as well as infrastructure, embedding social equity into every climate investment, and ensuring that adaptation finance reaches those who need it most. At the CEP, we see adaptation not as an add-on, but as a core act of solidarity. Together, let us make adaptation the defining promise of sustainable development, and, let me add, the most human expression of the Paris alignment.
Piero, go ahead.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Ilan. It's really a pleasure to be here. I just want to start by saying something which may appear obvious, but actually, let's not forget that adaptation finance may be economically compelling in many cases, but financially often is not. So let's celebrate what we've been doing as an MDBs, as a community. We've delivered a lot. I think we're the biggest provider of adaptation finance in the international financial system. So well done to us, I guess. Now, at the same time, a lot more needs to be done. And I think at EBRD, for example, we recognize that we haven't done enough to mobilize adaptation finance with the private sector. So that's a priority for us. We need to work to tackle the structural issues that prevent or make it very difficult to make adaptation finance as an asset class. So what we can do, this is something that EBRD is very much part of our priorities. One area where we're trying to work is identifying solutions to prioritize investments better, using data more effectively, but also trying to come up with risk assessment approaches that are recognized by the market. At the same time, using labeling and standards that help making investment decisions easier for investors. An important element is the work through cities. You know, the mayor from Chile made it very clear. It's very, very important to prioritize the work in cities. At EBRD, we are trying to introduce innovative frameworks to tackle extreme heat resilience through dedicated action plans, but also developing resilience as a model, resilience as a service models. So this is very important, this work with city. In the financial sector, again, thinking primarily about private sector, a lot of progress has been made, for example, in the debt release. Closed instruments, colleagues before talked about it. Very important also to focus on outcome-based finance. At EBRD, we've been working a lot on trying to improve the KPI, standardize the KPIs on sustainability linked loans, but also climate resilience bonds. So that's an area where ultimately we need to make concerted efforts. And let me perhaps conclude with a couple of, sorry, in that respect also, what is also particularly important is working with the financial regulators, because often there are barriers which are intrinsic to the way the financial sector works. For example, preventing investors to include resilience outcomes in their, or resilience finance objectives in their mandates. So that's particularly relevant. Now, let me conclude with a couple of examples. So first of all, at EBRD, we've been really working hard to make it climate resilience more mainstream in our operations. Last year, we managed to double the amount of the adaptation finance, but that's not enough. You know, we also need to introduce additional metrics to look at what are the resilience outcomes that are also interesting and attractive to the impact investors, for example. But also we're trying to mainstream resilience consideration in the existing products as a way to accelerate the scale up. For example, we have a lending facility, a mortgage lending facility in Uzbekistan with the local financial institutions, and we're integrating heat resilience consideration in these products. Another example is multiple use of water that facilitate, again, creating the compelling case for finance. One example is the investments with the Moroccan OCP, is a big fertilizer company. So last year we financed $200 million for a dual-use project, you know, providing water not only to their industrial operations, but also to the local municipality. And let me finish with, there's a lot of talks about partnerships, right? And we all believe in the value of partnership. But what we are trying to do in EBRD together with the other MDBs is also really develop what I would call operational partnerships. So where we work together with institution, organization that brings something different and more compelling to our main value proposition. And I would like to mention the work with not only the private sector, I see a number of private institutions here with which we cooperate, but also, for example, the work with the European space agencies when it comes to satellite information, how we integrate that information in our activities, the UNDRR and UNEP and many others. On this note, thank you very much, Helen.
Thank you, Gianpiero. And last but not least,
thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone. I have to say that in this COP30, I like this little adaptation strategy that we don't need to wear a tie if we don't want to. So that's a really good thing in this COP. Let me tell you, in the World Bank Group, we take adaptation very seriously, and we see it as a key part of what we call smart development. And we feel that adaptation investment is needed to create jobs and build resilience for the climate shocks that are going to come, and make sure that we can protect development. So we do it in three main ways. First of all, we provide financing at scale. We try to do our financing in the most innovative way possible, and then we try to apply increasingly knowledge in the way that we select our investments. So let me tell you a few numbers. The World Bank Group remains the largest of the MDBs when it comes to climate financing. In 2024, we did $44 billion in climate finance, and 41 billion of that is to low and middle income countries alone. Now, 42% of IBRD and IDA climate financing has been going to adaptation. And in terms of our overall World Bank Group financing, 35% is also going to adaptation. So it is significant, and in our IDA window, so the funding that goes to the poorest countries in the world, 53%, more than half of our commitments, have an adaptation element to support resilience for communities, companies, and for economic assets itself. So this is, the way we see it, resilience is not a cost. It's really an investment in protecting future economic development, and we're committed to that. Now, coming to financial innovation, let me give you a few examples on how we do it. First of all, we brought together the World Bank Group Guarantees platform. It's launched this year under MIGA, and this is how we provide political insurance and coverage for private sector investments around the world. So this is all in one-stop shop, and it is focusing on providing adaptation and mitigation, particularly for fragile and climate vulnerable economies. Now, to put our money where our mouth is, we have in our lending, we have what we call climate resilient debt clauses. So what that means is that if a country is hit by a disaster which is due to climate change, then we allow the country to pause the repayment of the loans that they owe the World Bank Group. And that has been very significant. It's providing relief to countries and the fiscal space so that they can have more urgent recovery. Now, I'll give you an example of how we help countries raise financing. In Côte d'Ivoire, we did a 450 million sustainability-linked loan. It is guaranteed by IBRD and MIGA, and that allows borrowing costs to be lower the more the country moves towards climate resilient and adaptation outcomes. In Fiji, we helped them with issuing a sovereign green bond. In Seychelles, we did a blue bond. And again, these are bonds that tie their lending costs to performing in climate outcomes. So the better a country develops in climate outcomes, the more easier it is for them to finance their debts. We also have the Global Risk Financing Facility and the IDA Crisis Response Window. And that means that with these facilities, countries can access quick and flexible financing if they are hit by a climate disaster. So these are concrete, innovative financial instruments that we have put in place, and they have been helping countries to deal with climate issues. Now, the third and really important area, of course, is helping countries design and understand better how they can develop their policies and their approaches to deal with climate change. So we have issued climate change and development reports for more than 93 countries now. This covers 2/3 of the world's population and almost all of low and middle income countries. And that helps countries to think through about what are their adaptation priorities, what are their financing needs, and what are the opportunities for private sector investment in this space. In our climate change and development reports, we have estimated that the cost of climate change globally, they will affect low and middle income countries by reducing the GDP of almost 20%. However, this 20% can be reduced by half if we have targeted adaptation investments and proactively try to address these expected losses. And then, as others said, we try to use knowledge from satellites, from modeling, to try and identify the vulnerable areas in the countries where we work in, and make sure that we do the right investments in infrastructure and in prevention so that they can deal with adaptation. So these are the three areas: financing at scale, innovative financing, and helping with knowledge. And lastly, let me say thanks a lot to the Climate Investment Funds for their support to our adaptation investments in all these three areas. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all my MDB colleagues for this rich discussion. I think it's a powerful confirmation of what we have in the publication. We're moving beyond projects to try to advance system-wide resilience, combining innovation, data, institution strengthening, and capital to deliver climate adaptation. And now we bring to the next segment, the very important segment, where we're going to see how our partners are delivering concessional and catalytic finance. I am pleased to invite the CEO of the Climate Investment Funds, Tariye Bagdasin, to introduce and lead our fireside chat with developing countries. Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you so much, Ellen, and excellencies, distinguished guests, colleagues. Thank you for joining us today for this important celebration of progress. I would like to also congratulate the Brazilian COP presidency for meeting this moment with momentum. That is, maintaining the adaptation agenda high in the climate priorities for this COP. We thank you for your leadership. It's wonderful to be here with so many of our partners, the MDBs, partner countries, and in the spirit of Mutirão, to collectively gather and solve for this most critical global challenge. Yes, we are at an inflection point. Resilience needs are now, they're clear, and they're present. Our countries are facing them daily through both extreme weather events or slow-moving weather events, climate events, excuse me. These are affecting food systems, health, water, businesses, and ultimately economic and social stability. The risks are many, but the opportunities prevail to de-risk and to build resilient economies that are even stronger, smarter, and more sound. This is growth, this is development. Increasingly, there are reports that are showing that investments in resilience can generate from between 4 and 10 times the return. Now, while this value may be dispersed through the economy, what is unequivocal is that there is value. And we have heard directly from the president and vice presidents of the MDBs that they're already acting to deliver on this value from resilience through innovative climate-smart solutions that deliver real-world results for countries who are asking for this support. 2 weeks ago, our friends and colleagues in Jamaica, Haiti, and the Dominican Republic were hit by the strongest storm in almost centuries. And in the last week, Vietnam and Philippines hit by typhoons and super typhoons. In the Caribbean, the damage and the loss of life, while appalling, was less than it would have been without significant resilience investments by Jamaica, which they made in the last decade, including early warning systems. Now, we are all quantifying the cost of inaction, but Jamaica and many other countries are showing us the gains from action. Resilience is investment in the future. It's a pathway to economic development, as many of our colleagues have said here today. Resilience investments are the preservers and the producers of jobs. Economic systems, when made climate resilient, are transforming communities, cities, and nations. At the Climate Investment Funds, we have been investing in resilience for about 17 years. CIF's results data shows that resilience investments de-risk communities and makes people better off. I heard this from women cooperative farmers in Cambodia and community leaders in Jamaica who benefited from CIF's investments. You see, resilience is not just about surviving, it's about thriving. And this is why I am so proud today to introduce CIF's Next Generation Resilience Program to accelerate resilience investments and innovation for sustainable economies, ARISE. ARISE builds on nearly 2 decades of experience at the CIF. It was designed in partnership with our MDB colleagues to mainstream resilience investments into national economic strategy. It builds on economic sectors as prioritized by our country partners during our first generation resilience program. They identified smart agriculture, food systems, water stewardship, resilient infrastructure, including natural infrastructure, early warning systems, and many more as the areas of priority. Finally, we will actively target private sector and private capital innovation and intervention, the next frontier of adaptation finance. With our deepest gratitude to the government of Germany and Spain, we welcome the first contributions of $100 million to ARISE. This seed funding is expected to unlock many more times additional public funding and, of course, capital mobilization. Arise, working through the MDB system in partnership with environment and economic planning ministries and other ministries, assures seamless leverage, capital mobilization, and funding sustainability, all seeded by precious concessional finance that Spain and Germany are providing. Now, to give us all an idea of what investments like this can mean for our partner countries on the front lines of climate crisis, it is my honor to invite to the stage the Honorable Mike Maposha, Minister of Green Economy and Environment of the country of Zambia, Government of Zambia, and Madame Louisa Selma Meki, the President of the National Institute for Disaster Risk Management and Reduction for Mozambique. Excellent. Well, thank you. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here with us today to share the evolving situation in your countries and to provide inspiration for others. First, though, we would like to screen a short video from the Jamaican authorities. They have a message for us. They were not able to join us today because of the devastation from the Hurricane Melissa. So here we have the Honorable Matthew Samuda, Minister of Water and Environment and Climate Change.
Greetings from Jamaica. I wish to extend my well wishes to our distinguished panelists and indeed to the Climate Investment Fund, and I thank them for the opportunity to address you digitally. I come to you from hurricane-ravaged Jamaica with the beautiful Caribbean Sea behind me. And I'm standing in a building which once stood and operated before Hurricane Melissa decimated much of the western end of our beautiful island. COP30 is a pivotal moment. You see, we are living the impact of climate change. We are experiencing the worst expectations of what climate change can do. Just last week, a Category 5 storm with wind gusts recorded over 250 miles an hour landed in Jamaica. It has left a trail of destruction, it has damaged buildings, it has disrupted livelihoods, and yes, it has cost lives. It has also created an ecological disaster with much of our flora and fauna damaged and some destroyed. Climate change to us is not a philosophical discussion. It's a reality we are living, not just with major events like Hurricane Melissa, but with slow onset events. So as this forum contemplates the future, we call on nations to honor their commitments already made. We are almost out of time. But understanding that the climate has already changed, I'm happy that colleagues at the CIF and indeed the IDB are here, because we need innovative financing solutions. The cost of resilience in many cases is beyond the capacity of SIDS like Jamaica. But we cannot build the same way we used to build, knowing that hurricanes can get to the strength of Hurricane Melissa. We cannot build in the way that we used to, knowing that the world is a hotter place. We cannot expect to have food security if we don't invest in climate-smart agriculture. Ladies and gentlemen, we're at an important inflection point. We will either get it right or we will reap the whirlwind. Jamaica supports the need for fora like this because we need innovative financing solutions to build resilience to the fact that the climate has already changed. I will greet you soon in person, but thank you for the opportunity to greet you digitally.
I'm sure the entire room will join me in acknowledging the courage and commitment of our Jamaican colleagues, finding some time to share that message with us, given all that they're facing right now. Honorable Minister and Madam President, CIF with Zambia and Mozambique have worked together for a long time. And we would love to hear how your country's priorities are being reshaped by the intensifying impacts of climate change, and what specific adaptation actions you are prioritizing to protect vulnerable communities and vulnerable sectors. Now, let me start with the Honorable Minister.
Thank you. Let me start by recognizing the presence of Your Excellencies, Honorable Ministers, Your Excellencies, Presidents and Vice Presidents of MDBs here present, our officials from your institutions, and of course the CEO for CIF. I also recognize the CEO for the Loss and Damage Fund. Thank you for joining us. With that said, Botade, good afternoon. I wish to thank CIF management and also the Inter-American Development Bank Group for organizing this very important event, but also for inviting Zambia to be part of this event. Before I get to your question, I want to just touch on what was already mentioned, which also our host president talked about, the disaster that hit our colleagues in Haiti, in Jamaica, but also to join many countries who have expressed their deep sympathy, and Zambia wishes to place on record our deep concern for our sympathy, and we stand in solidarity with the government and the people of Jamaica and other countries, including Cuba and Haiti, for the catastrophic damage and the tragic loss of lives caused by Hurricane Melissa. I want to also say that Hurricane Melissa reminds us of the increasing urgent need to not only adapt and build resilience, but build resilience to the effects of climate change, but also to restore the balance and harmony of nature, people, and climate. With that said, I want now to come to your question. The impacts of climate change for us in Zambia, like many people have alluded to, I think one of the speakers referred to our country, Zambia, really intensifying, and this can be seen from the severe drought that we experienced, the 2023-2024 drought, the most severe drought the country has ever seen over the past 40 years, which affected food production. I must add there that we lost more than 50% of our projected harvest for 2023-2024. It also affected energy production, as we depend, over 80% of our power production is hydro. And this has seen many of our citizens, businesses, enduring long hours of load management because of not having enough water levels with which to generate power. So the energy sector has severely been affected, but also the water security and generally the livelihoods of the millions of the people. So the intensifying impacts of climate change are fundamentally reshaping Zambia's priorities, shifting our national agenda to focus heavily on climate change adaptation and resilience building, as we have highlighted in our 8th National Development Plan. We have also included this in our, highlighted this in our National Adaptation Plan, the Nationally Determined Contribution, NDC 3.0, and the National Green Growth Strategy. In this regard, Zambia has integrated climate change considerations into the 8th National Development Plan sectoral policies and budgets to ensure that as we implement the 8th National Development Plan and sectoral policies, we simultaneously implement climate actions. Because of our vulnerability, the climate impacts, to climate impacts, Zambia has also articulated its adaptation priorities in our National Adaptation Plan, which we promulgated in the year 2023 to quantify our adaptation needs, attract finance, and drive cross-sector collaboration to build resilience. The other point is that the specific adaptation actions being prioritized to build resilience, to protect vulnerable communities and the sectors include the transition to climate-smart agriculture by shifting to use of drought-tolerant crop varieties and livestock breeds, expanding irrigation, improving access to seasonal weather forecasts, and diversifying income sources for farmers to ensure food security. In the water sector, we are protecting, restoring, and managing ecosystems like forests and wetlands to improve water availability, quality, and flood protection. We are also constructing and expanding water harvesting and storage infrastructure to capture and store surface and groundwater to enhance water supply reliability. Regarding infrastructure, I want to state here that we are prioritizing investment in resilience infrastructure such as flood control systems, improved building codes, and early warning systems to prevent immense economic losses. In the energy sector, which like I've already alluded to, we have deeply been affected there. Zambia is investing in the diversification of the energy mix by expanding the use of solar, wind, and geothermal power to enhance energy security and resilience. Government has also set the goal of adding 1,000 megawatts of solar energy to the national grid by the end of 2025. Additionally, government is implementing the presidential 1,000 mean grid initiative, which is improving energy access to underserved communities. So these are some of the initiatives, the interventions that we are putting to respond to the effects of climate change.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Madam President.
Muito obrigada. Boa tarde a todos. Antes de iniciar, gostaríamos de transmitir a nossa solidariedade como Moçambique ao Brasil pela ocorrência do tornado em Paraná. Prezada moderada Taire Gadege, muito obrigada por esta oportunidade que nos deu de fazer parte deste diálogo, por esta sessão. Como Moçambique, para as mudanças climáticas, não é uma ameaça abstrata, mas sim nós temos vivido como uma realidade.
Good afternoon, everybody. First, she wanted to extend her condolences to Brazil for the hurricane that has affected the state of Paraná yesterday. And she thanks you for your question, Moderator Terry Badegeshin. And she also wanted to say that for them, adaptation is not something that is distant from their reality. It is happening every day. It's not abstract, but it is something they're dealing with.
Nos últimos 5 anos, Moçambique foi impactado por elevado número de fenômenos climáticos extremos, sendo de destacar os ciclones ocorridos de Idai, Kenneth, Gombe, Fred e muito recentemente os ciclones de Chido, de Quelede e Xude. Estes também tivemos ocorrências de cheias e algumas zonas onde realmente tivemos também secas que foram causadas pelo fenômeno El Niño em 2023.
In the last 5 years, they have witnessed multiple extreme weather events, including a few cyclones, Idai, Kenneth, Gombe, Freddy, and recently also a lot of recurring floods, in addition to droughts that have been intensified by the El Niño phenomenon. So it just shows how much Mozambique is an extremely vulnerable country.
Estes fenômenos que acabei de mencionar colocam o Moçambique como um dos países mais vulneráveis a nível mundial. E com cada fenômeno que aconteceu, cada desastre ocorrido, foi um aprendizado para nós como Moçambique.
And these extreme weather events that have just been mentioned just speak about the extreme vulnerability of Mozambique. But amidst all the challenges that they have faced, they have learned a lot also. And this is how they are now bringing leadership and adaptive capacity to create a more resilient, developed economy.
E em função de vários impactos que nós tivemos, olhamos para a nossa condição como uma oportunidade para desafiar a nossa liderança, a capacidade de adaptação e orientação para um desenvolvimento resiliente.
And as just mentioned, they are just emphasizing the importance of the capacity that Mozambique has developed in front of all of these global phenomena, especially in terms of adaptation and resilience.
É sabido por todos também que como Moçambique foi destacado pela sua liderança a nível da proatividade na gestão do risco de desastres e atualmente Sua Excelência o Presidente da República, Daniel Francisco Chapo, é o campeão da União Africana para a área de gestão de risco de desastres.
And as it's well known worldwide, Mozambique is known for its leadership and proactivity in disaster risk management. And currently, His Excellency Daniel Francisco Chapo, the President of the Republic of Mozambique, is the African Union champion in disaster risk management.
Indo diretamente para a pergunta que nos foi feita sobre como é que Moçambique está a enfrentar as mudanças climáticas e em termos de prioridade, nós iríamos destacar aqui que o nosso governo, através dos vários parceiros, tem dado passos significativos a nível de todos os níveis, seja políticos, estratégicos, assim como técnicos operacional, para reformular as prioridades face ao impacto das mudanças climáticas.
And also to answer your question, the government of Mozambique has been building on strong partnerships at all levels, political, strategic, technical, and operational, to be able to deliver on more impact on climate change.
E aqui nós priorizamos a adaptação. E é com esta adaptação que, a nível nacional, e não é considerada como um projeto, mas sim como uma estratégia nacional das mudanças climáticas. No âmbito desta estratégia 2013-2025, está estruturada em volta da adaptação e gestão do risco climático. O governo estima que até 2030, cerca de 37 bilhões de dólares deverão ser investidos no fortalecimento do capital humano, físico e natural para a resiliência.
The government of Mozambique has prioritized adaptation as a national program, and also in its strategy between the 2013 and 2025, it has put adaptation at the center of all responses, and it estimates that also by the year of 2030, approximately 37 billion will be needed to invest in strengthening human, physical, and natural capital for resilience.
Estamos também virados para uma mudança de abordagem, neste caso uma abordagem abordagem reativa para uma abordagem mais proativa e de prevenção através do financiamento baseado em previsões das ações antecipadas, que tem constituído um grande avanço na busca de soluções inovadoras e efetivas com vista a salvar mais vidas, humanas e meios de subsistência, como a proteção e os ganhos de processos de adaptação e resiliência.
They're moving from a strategy that used to be more reactive to a proactive response so that they can prioritize livelihoods and address the needs that are coming and becoming more intensified every single day with the impacts of climate change.
A expansão dos sistemas de aviso prévio, que tem, neste momento, estado a cobrir parte significativa da população moçambicana, e através deste programa de aviso prévio para todos, que foi lançado pelo secretário-geral das Nações Unidas, em Moçambique é liderado pelo Instituto Nacional de Meteorologia. Esperamos que até 2027 todas as comunidades moçambicanas estejam cobertas pelo aviso prévio.
The expansion of early warning systems, which are currently covering a significant portion of the Mozambican population, and through the early warning for all program launched by the UN Secretary General, led in the country by the National Institute of Meteorology, present here. We expect that by 2027, all Mozambican communities will be covered by early warning systems.
Em Moçambique, a nossa instituição, através do governo, é quem coordena a operacionalização do plano de contingência e, por via disso, é assegurada a integração de ação climática a nível dos orçamentos a nível nacional, através do Fundo de Gestão de Calamidades, assim como outras ferramentas de desembolso, como o Plano Econômico Social, assim como o orçamento do governo.
It is our organization that coordinates the operationalization of the National Contingency Plan, thereby ensuring the integration of climate action into national budgets through the Disaster Management Fund and other disbursement tools, such as the Economic and Social Plan and the government budget.
Recentemente, o nosso país subscreveu a programas de acesso a fundos através de seguros soberanos contra desastres, que pela primeira vez foram ativados, possibilitando o desembolso de recursos para assistir às comunidades afetadas por ciclones tropicais, afetados por a seca, e com uma priorização a questões do género. Muito obrigada.
And the last portion. So recently, the country has also subscribed to programs for accessing funds through sovereign disaster insurance, which were activated for the first time, enabling the disbursement of resources to assist communities affected by tropical cyclones and drought, prioritizing gender issues.
Muito obrigada. And we are actually out of time. It's been a very enlightening discussion. And I think a lot of our ministers actually gave such thorough responses that they in many ways covered a lot of what we were going to discuss. So it's been a very robust conversation. And I would like to thank you for sharing the important work that you're doing in your respective countries and just showcasing how you are actively solving for resilience and embedding it through your national systems, your planning systems, and your environment and climate systems. So at this point, I would like to ask our guests to, are we going down? Yes. Well, I would like to invite the Special Advisor and Assistant Secretary General for Climate Action, Selwyn Hart, to give us some closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Taria, and distinguished ministers, colleagues and friends from the MDB and Climate Funds systems, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here with you, and let me thank you, Taria, and your colleagues at the CIF for, on the first day of the COP, bringing the issue of adaptation to the forefront. President Lula, and this was firmly supported by the Secretary General, has called this COP a COP of truth. And when you look at the truths before us, we know that adaptation support and adaptation finance, 10 years into the implementation of the Paris Agreement, continues to lag behind finance to support mitigation. And we know that when one looks at the NDCs that are already on the table, they will not take us to the 1.5 degree goal, despite, and on the positive side, the quality of the NDCs they've improved significantly. They're a lot more detailed. Many of them are economy-wide, and over 80% of the new NDCs contain a very strong adaptation component. So another hard truth is that adaptation is and remains a strong priority for developing country. And the third truth is that the reality is that the climate crisis is accelerating. It's accelerating at a pace that we did not envisage a decade ago. And the reality is that we will overshoot the 1.5 degree goal, and this is something that the Secretary General has said, and possibly within the next decade. And we know that this is a global average, and that in most developing country regions, are warming faster than the global average. So we are in a race against time to build resilient economies and societies. And the reality is that we will be, and we are living in a age of increasing climate uncertainty and instability. It is no longer a distant threat, and as you've seen from the images in Jamaica, climate disasters and climate instability is here with us to stay. So we will need speed and scale, and we've seen this across, and you've heard this over the course of the last few days. This is a COP that must really send a very strong signal that the next decade must be a decade of acceleration. Acceleration in emission reductions, but also acceleration on the adaptation front. And we've heard from many of you on the positive, extremely positive side, that over the course of the last 10 years, the toolbox to address the adaptation challenges of developing countries, that toolbox has expanded. What we need over the course of the next decade is speed and scale. And therefore, you in this room and in the boardrooms of the MDBs and the climate funds, you have a unique opportunity really to play a major role. So my request to you, I have 3 acts. I deliver these acts, and you'll hear them repeatedly over the course of the next 2 weeks. 1, to deliver on this speed and scale, more than ever, we need your leadership. Your leadership really in scaling up adaptation finance, your leadership, strong leadership in delivering on the Baku to Belém roadmap. Your leadership will be absolutely critical. Many of you are insulated at a time of declining bilateral support and assistance, at a time of geopolitical turmoil. The MDBs will need to play an increasingly important leadership role, cutting through the geopolitical divisions and mess. Many of you are also insulated from some of the turmoil that we're seeing on the geopolitical front. So we will need you to assume a much greater sense of leadership. Second is continue to innovate. Innovate. We will need creative solutions as the pace of the crisis accelerates. A decade ago, no one was speaking about pauses in loan, or very few people were speaking about pauses in debt and loan instruments. Now they are becoming mainstream. We need this innovation to continue at pace and scale. And finally, coordination. No one can do this alone. I know coordination is sometimes a bad word. You all have your different boards, but coordination will be critical. When you work together, you can have that scale and impact. And no developing country wants to have, and we in the UN system, we are also guilty of that, so I will acknowledge that. But coordination will be absolutely critical if we are to deliver at the pace and scale. So thank you so much, Taria. Your leadership and the leadership of CIF will be critical, and you can count on the United Nations to be an essential partner with you in this effort. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Assistant Secretary General Selwyn, for all of your support and the spirit of collaboration. Let me also acknowledge the presence of the Fund for Responding to Loss and Damage. Ibrahima, thank you for joining us. We are going to be collaborating toward how we can continue to support the efforts and creating seamless links to disaster risk recovery as we do a lot of our work on resilience. It's great to have you with us today. Many thanks to our IDB colleagues, all of our MDBs, our partners, and our developing country partners for being with us today. And on that note, I will close the event.